We're kind of in a situation now where every single day the phone rings and we're speaking to a different client around their e-commerce needs. And there's obviously a big reason for that. The industry is having to innovate pretty harsh and pretty quickly around how to adjust to the different kind of measures that governments are bringing in. And we thought we'd share a few of our thoughts because we've had some really interesting conversations. A lot of our clients are doing some really interesting things in terms of how to respond to this and some of the considerations that they're coming up against. Effectively, how to take the restaurant experience, which is something that all of our clients in the industry are specialists in, and how to turn that into an experience that can be enjoyed in the space of your own home. Now some of the brands that we work with will be quite adept at delivery and takeaway and that kind of stuff, but others are not at all, right? Particularly on the sort of more kind of fine dining and higher end restaurants, and trying to kind of tackle those challenges and look at those problems about how to get the experience of someone's restaurant into someone's home has been thrown up some interesting considerations, and kind of want to talk that through with you. So yeah, here with Naomi, our CMO, and I thought it'd be a good time to sort of talk a little bit about some of the opportunities that e-commerce presents to brands and what the sort of conversations we're having with clients at the moment.
Yeah, sure. I'm the same. Like every single day, a client is asking me about e-commerce for hospitality. And it's funny because it's not new. Hospitality e-commerce has been around for years, like gift vouchers and experiences and cocktail classes and that kind of thing. And certainly deliveries like just ballooned over the last few years. So it's not new, but people are kind of slow to embrace it, I think. And I wonder whether part of that is giving away control. We know a lot of our clients, especially at the higher end of the market, they've spent decades building up their brands and making sure that like everything's just perfect in the restaurant, and that experience is like what makes their brand. So I think a lot of the reticence to embrace e-commerce or embrace digital has come from that, really, like not wanting to hand over control to delivery drivers, to couriers or whatever. But it's interesting for sure, and we know it's the future, right? Like it's not just about jumping on the bandwagon for lockdown or throughout COVID, or it's not just for Christmas. I think this is a macro trend. Like consumers want to consume brands online, their favorite brands. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's a really exciting time. There's definitely lots of opportunity within this crisis. We know that, right? Like tough times force people to innovate. They force them to shift and adapt, and the word pivot that we hear all the time, but it's because consumer behavior is changing like at a pace that like I've never seen. And I've been in hospitality marketing for like 15 years now. So it's really exciting and there's a lot of opportunities, but I think there's a lot, like the people that win will be the people that do it properly. I think like there's definitely an argument for a kind of quick and dirty, like it's pretty simple to set up an e-commerce shop, especially if it's for something like gift vouchers or an online product. That can be done like in a matter of hours, or days. Set up an e-commerce campaign. You can start reaching new markets and like getting your product into people's hands pretty quickly. But I think the real winners will be the people that take the time to look at their brand first and think, well, what is it that makes us special? Why do people love us anyway? What is special and unique and different about the in-restaurant experience, the core experience? And how do we translate that into our online product or service, whatever it is? Because it's not just delivery, it's delivery, click and collect, meal kits, merchandise, bottled cocktails, wine, like the list is endless. But the successful people will be the people that understand how to take the power of their brand, distill it, and then apply that to all of their different products. So it's a classic example of a brand extension.
Yeah, what I was going to say is that it's quite an interesting shift in mentality for restaurants, right? So going from a very controlled environment, which is, this is my restaurant, this is my space, I've trained my team, I've ensured that every single step of the service is bespoke and done that way. And you're now entrusting your brand into consumers' hands and into the hands of delivery drivers, into DPD and into the various kind of like people that are actually going to be in charge of ensuring that what you are putting together arrives there. But there is a degree of lack of control there. But equally, there's also an incredible opportunity to take what is, I think, quite often an undervalued part of restaurants is their brand, right? Like the brands that we have like really strong brand reputations, yes, amongst their customer base, but also in a broader sweep, And I think there's a big opportunity to say, okay, you know, I have my restaurant, I have my experience here, which is confined to a geographical location, right? So like if I have my restaurant, my experience here, and I'm based in Covent Garden, my reach is only so far, and anyone who wants to come and experience my brand has to travel to see me. Well, you can take that up, and suddenly it becomes something that can be experienced not just across the UK, but beyond that. I think it's a really interesting shift in mentality from a marketing, branding, and business perspective that is shifting away from how do I deliver a great experience with the customers, how do I get customers to come to my restaurant, and how do I get those customers to then enjoy my experience and then go and share it with their friends, to how can I leverage the power of my brands to actually extend my brand reach and leverage that power, right? Which I think is a really a big sort of fundamental shift, really.
Yeah, and all those barriers that you just mentioned of why people might not be able to experience your brand in its original format, like in your restaurant, because of whether it's geographical or any other number of things. Suddenly those barriers aren't there anymore. So, you know, if you're a restaurant group and you've got 3 or 4 restaurants in London, you know, people can travel down, sure, and visit when they're coming into town. We know that travel is limited right now. So to be able to put your brand online through delivery, meal kits, vouchers, online events, suddenly you're opening up a whole market of people that before you couldn't talk to. And I think one particularly interesting thing is, like, a marketer, when we're talking about building brands, we've been saying at Ignite for years now, like, online and digital marketing can be used to build brands. It's perceived as something that you do in an emergency, or it's like a button that you push or something. But we know that you can use digital really powerfully to build brands and build audiences. And that's part of what I find so exciting about the opportunities within e-commerce. You know, if I'm a restaurant group with a number of restaurants and I'm looking to expand my physical restaurant locations into new areas, even into new countries, if you've got an e-commerce presence there already, then you've got a built-in audience. That's part of the power of it, I think, that I find so exciting. And also going back to this idea of, like, distilling what it is that makes your brand special and developing products from that. That's, like, I can't overstate that enough. I think, you know, this isn't just about putting something in a box. That's not e-commerce. Put it online and stick it in a box. It's thinking through how to make that customer experience as special as the experience that they have
I
in
think
your restaurant.
that's a really interesting point, because I think that one of the benefits the hospitality businesses have is that, you know, hospitality is about experiences. We've talked about that for many a year. You know, it's about creating experiences for customers. And e-commerce businesses, although, you know, the more advanced e-commerce businesses do speak in this way as well. But typically, if you can take the approach of a hospitality business or a restaurant, of a bar, and apply that same thinking and sort of creating a sense of excitement and experience and the senses and everything that comes from when you enter into a restaurant. And we know what makes a successful restaurant, bar, hotel. It's a multi-sensory experience. If you take that thinking and apply it to the e-commerce space about how something can be enjoyed at home, it takes what is essentially a food delivery into a whole different realm, you know. So I think there's going to be a lot of innovation in that area, but taking that mindset to the e-commerce space, I think, allows restaurants to set themselves apart from what is typically seen as a functional, how do I go online, get something, get it delivered to me. It's now become something which is like, how can I enjoy something at home in a different way, you know. And I think there's a lot of innovation that can be done around that.
Always looking for new experiences, not just out of home, but at home now more than ever, right? I think also we should mention gifting. You know, it's we know there's a whole generation of people really growing up where the experience economy, this is where it's coming from, this is where it's growing, right? Not to say it's only young people, but there's definitely, you know, a wealth of people who just don't value, like, products and things and stuff in the same way as previous generations. And people want experiences and something that has experiences that have got meaning. And I think people do look to hospitality for that. It's even more so than in a retail environment, right? Like, you can buy someone like a John Lewis voucher or a gift voucher or a picture in a frame or whatever. But I think an experience in a restaurant, there's a lot of emotional attachment there.
Totally, and I think that's where a lot of the sort of the potential lies with restaurants, right? Because, you know, the retail industry is cottoned on to the idea of experiences as something that's been sold for a long time. Right now, it's a very quick and easy thing to be able to sell, but they typically are quite boring, right? Those, well, what gets
Yeah,
delivered, and the experience of it from a consumer perspective is typically quite boring. And you see all these like the Virgin experiences and all this kind of stuff it's fairly like it's what your grandma gets you, and they've run out of ideas of what to get you, and they don't know. I'll just get you a quick
I
experience.
literally have that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's boring, right? And so hospitality industry prides itself on being exciting, energized, innovative in a way that allows them to consistently push the boundaries of what experiences within the confines of a venue, right? And so if we take that same mentality and apply it to the e-commerce space, then it has the opportunity to really boom.
Yeah, and also we know that people want to support restaurants, especially right now. Like, why would you line Amazon's pockets this Christmas, quite
Yeah.
honestly, and order stuff from Amazon when you can support like your local restaurant or like a brand that you really love? And who knows if they're going to be open this Christmas, but you can support them now, and then hopefully next year, you can go in and
It's the businesses that are going to do this properly, and really kind of invest for the future, that are going to come out of this fighting, because I think there is a real need within the industry right now to be reactive, so to quickly respond. Right, I've got second lockdowns on me. I need to be able to do delivery. I need to be able to get my gift boxes to people's houses. There's a kind of a rapid need for a reactive industry to respond in that way, right? But some of the more interesting conversations I've been having, and I know you have as well, Naomi, with clients, is the ones that are viewing this as a kind of long-term new business model.
yeah,
And quite a number of the restaurant groups that I've been speaking to are saying that they see the potential for this to be the equivalent of a new restaurant opening. And I think if you start to see it as a kind of long-term setup, that suddenly becomes a whole different conversation, and something that I think opens up a new way of thinking about how we can use this, which is one of the worst crises to hit hospitality industry ever. How we can start to
yeah.
use this, the shift in consumer behavior around ordering from restaurants and understanding that, and the forced innovation to set up actually long-term kind of revenue growth, as we come out of the crisis, hopefully next year.
Well, the interesting thing is, I think it would have happened anyway. I just think the crisis has made it happen faster and made us all have to adapt faster.
Yeah.
But the good side to that, I suppose, is that we'll get learnings faster, because with all these things, we can do something, simple, straightforward to start off with. It's very easy to set up like a simple gift voucher shop or get some meal kits out or some wine. But then you can add to that and you can expand it and you can figure out what people like. And this is what restaurants do all the time, right? They're always tweaking their menus, looking at what sells, look at customer feedback as well and embrace that feedback,
Mm-hmm.
and then just improve the experience and the product all the time, and also how you distribute it out to your clients and how you reach new people. The whole thing is evolving. Rome wasn't built in a day, so no brand can just suddenly do incredible e-commerce overnight. It's a bit of a journey. I think also from a marketing point of view, a marketing standpoint, there's definitely like really exciting things that we can be doing as marketers. We know after years of doing restaurant marketing, it's not a transactional business. So it's more actually about building brands, and people realize with restaurant marketing online, because we can't track really how people find out about your brand, and that decision making process, a lot of it occurs offline. So it's not really trackable end to end. With e-commerce, it is, we can target people very specifically, trace them all the way through the shop buying journey, right through to putting something in their basket and checking out. And then there's all sorts of techniques like abandoned baskets, remarketing, and dynamic ads that
Yeah,
we can.
I want to jump in there because I think that, like, I can't tell you the number of conversations I've had with CEOs, financial directors, and so forth, where you're up in front of a board or something, and you need to justify marketing spend within restaurants, and
Yeah,
there are loads and loads and loads of indicative factors around restaurants when you do marketing, right? Like how many people have seen the advert, whether or not they've engaged, what the sort of comment value is, like how many of them click through to the website, what their behavior then is on that website, right? So we can get a really, really, really good idea with restaurant marketing of whether or not a campaign has led to to a booking, right? But to track all the way through from someone seeing a campaign and engaging it all the way through to actually eating with it in a restaurant or drinking at a bar, there are so many drop-off points there that you can't track with certainty that for sure this led to that, and to come up with that kind of like silver bullet, as it were, for a finance director in a big company and say, yes, you spent this much and you definitely 100% got this much back, is almost impossible within the restaurant sector. So, but thankfully, with e-commerce and with the advent of what we're seeing during lockdown, is that we are able to say, yes, you spent £1, you got £10 back, 100% guaranteed. There's no, this is watertight. You can see it. We spend this much on adverts, on set of adverts. This many people click through to the shop. This many then completed. Some of them dropped out. We brought them back in with the abandoned basket campaigns, and your return on ad spend is 10 times. And to have that silver bullet as marketers now within hospitality, and to sort of justify and prove that the digital marketing really does deliver measurable returns, is a complete transformation, right? And it's something that, from a marketing perspective, we've seen people get really excited about.
That's the dream. It's like it's the holy grail, being
Yeah.
able to track that. I mean, it's not even an argument that you need to have them with finance, right? It almost becomes a cost of sales. The amount that you invest then in your advertising is a cost of sales, and that's how I would sell it, for
Yeah.
sure.
And then we've looked with, like, I mean, I look with envy sometimes, although we do work in retail, but like, I look with envy at, your kind of Amazons of the world, where it's like, 100%, there's no, all it is it becomes like you said, it's a cost of sale, it becomes a financial decision. It's driven by finance in some ways, the revenue input, as opposed to marketing going to finance with open hands and saying like, oh, please, can we get some revenue? Can we get some ad spend and blah, blah, blah. Instead, it's like, well, we know it's generating this, so how much are we going to invest at what point? And that sort of payoff is an incredible place to be, right? And it's something that we're seeing within e-commerce. And the benefit so far has been that because of the successes we're seeing in the e-commerce space, that's then justified some of the kind of the similar work that's going on with the general restaurant marketing, because then a company goes, oh, right, it definitely works with this, and we can see that, therefore that transfers across.
And then also, I think that's where there's an argument that anything that you invest in e-commerce that drives direct sales circles back and benefits your brand as well. So to my point earlier on, nothing you want to do online and nothing that you're doing with e-commerce should like dilute or distill like your core like brand experience and like going to the restaurant. Like, I don't believe that it cannibalizes that sale. I think sometimes there's nervousness around that, like, oh well, if people can buy my product online and get it delivered to their home, are they not going to come in anymore? And people used to say this with cookbooks as well. Well, if we release a cookbook and like give away our secrets, they won't come in. And it's like, that's a load of bollocks, because it's a completely different purpose and occasion. Like, people are still going to want to come into your restaurant and celebrate. And in fact, to me, the restaurant experience is only like bolstered and boosted by your experience, assuming your online experience is good, of course, the actual purchase online, the website, that whole bit, and then the product coming into your home and you consuming it at home. As long as that's all good, that just lifts your ultimate brand experience, and not to mention your reputation, everything else.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned cookbooks, because cookbooks are a good example of this, actually, because they act as they have a much wider reach than the restaurants, right? If you look at like Jamie Oliver's and Gordon Ramsay's and this kind of stuff, like, it's much easier to come across a recipe book than it is to go to the restaurant, right? Particularly if you're a sort of more expensive restaurant or you're not near where those locations are, right? But the more work that is done from a recipe, from a cookbook perspective, and TV appearances and all this kind of stuff, that acts as a massive feeder for the restaurants. And the same goes with e-commerce, right? Like, if you create an incredible experience, you lift it out of the restaurant, you go outside of your geographical confines of your restaurant, and you're able to get some brand reach through doing some exciting experiences, and you can deliver nationwide, then that's putting your name out there in a way that will also act as a funnel back into the restaurant. So it becomes part of the marketing strategy, ongoing, which is another reason to kind of, for the longevity of it, is like, yes, it's a new revenue stream. Yes, it's going to make you extra money, and it can be in some cases the equivalent to opening a new restaurant, but also it's going to act as a feeder for all of your other restaurants from a brand perspective.
Yeah, well, the product, it's one of the 5 Ps, isn't it? It's like your classic marketing mix, but it's a really underutilized one, I think, because a lot of people focus, as we know, on comms and like how you talk to customers and how you advertise, but actually using your product to market yourselves as a positioning tool as well. And this comes back to this idea of like really looking and really thinking about what your product is going to be online is so important. There's practical considerations, like, what can I deliver that's going to be like good and fresh and travel well, or
It's the unboxing moment that you've talked about before, right? Like, how do you
Yeah,
create that
exactly.
experience to be enjoyed at home, so that when you open that box and and whatever it is that you get delivered, that becomes a proper exciting experience, you know? And how can you excite people? Because there's the practical consideration, but then how do you really excite someone in the digital space to go, holy shit, like I have to get that, you know, for myself for Friday night. I've got the parents coming over. Like, if I order that and get it, it's going to be, I know it's going to be a great experience.